I am honored to have with me one of our favorite guests here. Made history, and I was reminded about it again this week, his old district, from which he launched a career that changed the world, as they say, in Georgia, the 6th Congressional District, former Speaker of the House from that very district. With me now on all of these developments, Newt Gingrich. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to be here.
I did want to touch on the meaning of what happened this week in your old haunt, and whether Democrats should be salivating about a runoff that could be competitive. What do you think?
I think it will be competitive. Look, they put $8.2 million into the first round, and they did a great job of turnout, and they came very close to winning outright in a field of a lot of candidates. The Republicans have to take this very seriously. I think Ossoff, the Democrat, is a very serious opponent. I think that Karen Handel can beat him. She's the Republican. Right. But she's going to have to beat him. This is not an automatic, if he'd been down at 41, 42%, I would have said to you that this is automatic. But he really came close to winning a huge field.
Right, yeah.
So I think, and the Democrats know it. They've already poured money in. They're already running ads now for a June primary. And June is a month when in Atlanta, a lot of folks go to the mountains or the ocean. And so we got to make sure
they vote. What is
that
district like? You know it very, very well. And the rap has been, bad place for a conservative to not put in a good show. But it's not really
Well, it's a classical changing suburban district.
Yeah.
Of the 10 districts that have the highest education level in the United States, it is the only one held by a Republican. Now, Tom Price has done a great job. He won by 23 points last time. But I think it's not an automatic Republican district.
And Mitt Romney won by a couple of dozen points, right?
But I think what you had is Ossoff, for all the money he spent, got 1.5 points more than Hillary. You have to give them technically a lot of credit. But it's a district. Governor Deal's very popular. We have 2 Republican U.S. senators. The president's going to actively be involved. And I think in the end we probably will win. But nobody should say for sure.
Do you think that was a concern for President Trump, that this was an indictment on him?
Sure. I mean, look, it's very common for presidents to pick people out of the Congress to be in the cabinet and then lose their seat in a special election. That's not uncommon. But no president likes to lose seats. Sure. And the Democrats almost thought they were going to win Kansas, then they lost. They almost thought they were going to win Georgia.
They did come within 6 points.
They came within 6 points.
Unusual. Right?
And so I think they are, and I don't blame them, they're very hungry to win somewhere.
So hungry, Nancy Pelosi was saying, as you heard last night, we're going to win the House. We're going to take it back.
They have a chance. But they don't.
What do Republicans have to do to avoid that?
Avoid the House next year or avoid Georgia?
Well, to avoid the House tipping Democrat.
Just do a good job of representing the American people, solve problems, create jobs, have tax cuts, have regulatory reform, have a great infrastructure bill.
John Boehner had said they need to start putting up points. They need to start putting up wins.
Sure.
Presumably a health care rework, a tax cut. What do you think?
Yeah, I would actually lead with infrastructure, because you're going to get a huge number of Democrats, and it's easier to do. I'd go to tax cuts. Tax reform is less important than tax cuts. Because what I want to do is get this economy growing. Right now you have a rally which is a Trump rally, but you don't have an economy yet which is a Trump reality. And if this is not a bubble, it's going to be because Trump's going to grow the economy to catch up with the stock market.
That's
very important.
I'm sorry, Speaker. Do you worry? We talk about the markets, and we talk about how they're almost priced for perfection, today notwithstanding. But they're really only a couple of points of their all-time highs reached back in early March. But they want to see those tax cuts. They want to see all of the stuff that the president promised, and that if that's delayed significantly, it's just as good as denied.
Well, that's partly true, but on the other hand, they're watching tremendous regulatory reform, which is going to free up a lot of money. They're looking at the president take steps that fit what they want to see. I mean, I think with the numbers that came out last month were all-time highs for CEO confidence, for investor confidence, for small business confidence. So there's a sense that Trump's moving us in the right general direction. Look, I try to remind people, because I used to be Speaker of the House, and people always are sort of impatient with Congress. When I was a very junior member, it took us until August to pass the Reagan tax cuts, and we were just giving money away. And it took till August. When I became Speaker, it took us 18 months to pass welfare reform, and that was 92% approval. I mean, these things are hard to do. They're complicated. The Constitution's designed this way.
And what do you think of this 100-day fixation?
Well, FDR did it, and frankly, if they would forget the Congress a minute and you would look at all the different things Trump has done, starting with a Supreme Court justice, going to all the deregulatory stuff, all the executive orders, all the meetings he's held with CEOs who've committed to do things. He's had a very impressive first 100 days. The fact that he got the Chinese to abstain on a vote in the UN when normally they'd be with the Russians, he isolated Russia totally. Trump has had a great couple months, but first of all, the regular news media is never going to cover that.
No.
And second, I think they let themselves at the White House get sucked into the daily news coverage when they should take a step back and they should communicate what they want to communicate. They're having a great year so far. He's meeting with foreign leaders all over. Remember, this is the guy who's an isolationist. This is the guy who doesn't know anything about foreign policy. Well, he's now calling his friend the King of Saudi Arabia or his friend the President of Egypt to chat with him. And, you know, he's getting a lot of stuff done. He's got a good friend now in China.
But do you know his mindset on the things that matter to this audience, Speaker, and that is on tax cuts? We just had a woman on who says they have to be paid for it. We have a number of supply-siders who were writing in the Journal and elsewhere this week. No, they don't. They don't have to be revenue neutral because they're going to bring you revenue down the road. How do you feel about that?
I think it ought to be deficit neutral, not revenue neutral. I am a supply-sider,
right.
So I think they get some advantage, and you can get some feedback loop. But in addition, if you cut spending, that ought to create a space for us to be able to cut taxes deeper. For example, there's about $110 billion a year in fraud in Medicare and Medicaid. If you applied an American Express, Visa, MasterCard model of anti-fraud, you probably bring that down by 70, 80, 90 billion dollars.
But Republicans and Democrats have always bemoaned that, and they never.
But they never passed the right legislation. I'm just saying there are 100 things you can do. I think the government owns 77.
But he's going to be increasing spending if he gets his, infrastructure plan, even though
right.
that,
So you find ways, but they're offsetting.
But does that worry you
spending.
as someone who was hacking the deficits and leading
No,
us to surpluses?
I'm not worried because we balanced the budget for 4 straight years when I was Speaker. I think by the end of his second term, he'll be balancing the budget.
But you're okay with deficits potentially getting worse.
I'm okay without being crazy about it.
Right.
I'm okay with a investment-oriented and jobs-oriented tax cut that I do think will grow the economy. And I think, Reagan created 19 million jobs. Now, you do that. In his farewell address, he talks about what it felt like to have created 19 million new jobs. You do that, Trump gets reelected, and probably his successor as a Republican gets reelected. You don't create those. So I'm not worrying about the deficit. I'm worried about job creation, one, job creation,
two. But to get there,
two.
the rep seems to be he's got to get significant tax relief. And Ronald Reagan had significant tax relief.
Absolutely.
Now we're hearing that it might not be that big in terms of tax cuts, and that it might be offset for some, the upper income, for example, limiting their deductions. If you hear and see that, would Newt Gingrich worry?
Yes, I worry because everybody whose taxes you raise feels it. Everybody whose taxes you lower didn't notice it.
So it's marginal. That doesn't do it.
Politics is a business where you have to have 9 people winning for every loser, because the loser notices it and the 9 winners don't.
And the 9 winners don't necessarily go out and vote.
Right.
Stepping back from this, how closely do presidents watch stock markets? How closely did you, as Speaker, watch the stock market as a...
Only if it's big. Remember '87 when there was a really almost catastrophic collapse in one day?
Right.
That you notice. But the truth is, okay, I'm going to be old-fashioned here because I listened to your very opening. This market, sooner or later, has to have a correction of some kind, I mean, even minor. And this idea that, oh, my God, what if we actually went down 1%? We're coming down off 20,000 point down.
No doubt.